They're used to getting these students from a whole range of students. Hey friends, so today's video is going to be a continuation of my law school admissions process series, and this video is going to be about arguably the most important part of the law school admissions process: scholarships and grants. If you're like me, then scholarships and grants are going to be one of the only ways that you're going to make a big dent in your law school debt before you graduate. So today I'm going to break down what I'm going to talk about into 4 different categories. The first is my general knowledge about grants and scholarships. The second is how to get merit-based aid. The third is how to compare your scholarship to other scholarship offers. And the last one is going to be how to negotiate for more scholarship money once you've been given a scholarship already. As mentioned in one of my previous videos, I'll be starting my first year at Georgetown Law this fall as an evening student, and I was given a 2/3 non-conditional scholarship for my entire time at school. So let's start with some general information about merit-based aid. Merit-based aid is different from need-based aid because it's going to be granted based on your stats. In other words, your GPA or your test scores. There are a lot of different types of scholarships and grants, but for the bulk of this video, I'm going to be talking about scholarships and grants that you can get that will come directly from the university that you plan to go to. This being said, if you're heading to law school, you can also get other types of scholarships from law firms or just companies in general or organizations, but I won't go into those in too much detail in this video. So let's get started with some general info on law school cost of attendance. When you take a look at a school's website, you can 9 times out of 10 see a breakdown of their estimated cost of attendance for attending that law school. Oftentimes, a cost of attendance can be as high as something like $90,000 or $100,000, but I wouldn't look at those numbers too closely. And the reason I say that is because the bulk of your law school costs are not necessarily going to align with what is on the cost of attendance website. They're basically just giving you a worst case scenario of what it's going to cost to attend that school in the course of an academic school year. A lot of the expenses listed on the cost of attendance website are going to be life costs that are going to be largely variable based on how you live and what your expenses are and aren't, what you choose to splurge on and what you choose not to splurge on. Now, for example, on the Georgetown Law School website, the cost of attendance for a daytime student is about $66,000 per academic school year. Now, that's pretty much a non-variable cost, meaning that if you plan to attend law school, there's not a whole lot you can do to massage that cost unless you get scholarships or grants or something of the sort. So when you're applying for scholarships, what you want to look for is enough money to cover at least that base tuition cost. Room and board, for example, looks like it's listed at $22,000, but if you have roommates or if you live off campus or just live at home, that cost can be significantly reduced. The same goes for books. It looks like their projected cost is around $1,300, but if you decide not to buy your books on campus at the bookstore, those costs could probably be a lot less as well. And when we take a look at transportation costs and personal expenses, those are both projected to be around $3,000 for the academic school year. But again, your personal costs are completely dependent on you as a person, and similar to your transportation. Say you don't take Lyft and Uber or public transportation in general, and you just bike around DC. That could also make those costs significantly lower than what they've estimated them to be. So when it comes to getting scholarships and grants, get as much money as you can to cover just that base tuition cost. As mentioned, lifestyle costs can be extremely variable. So let's break down the 2 different types of merit-based scholarships and grants that you can receive as an incoming law student. There's basically conditional scholarships and unconditional scholarships. Conditional aid is the type of scholarship that's contingent on your achievement as a law student. These scholarships can be tricky because if your GPA slips or your class rank slips, you could lose your scholarship and essentially be on the hook for paying a law school a lot more money than you originally anticipated going into it. If you are given a conditional scholarship from a law school, I advise you to take a look at something called an ABA, American Bar Association 509 report. 509 reports are basically a compilation of all of the data and statistics that law schools compile about their incoming class and about their current law students. It has everything from JD attrition to ethnic breakdowns for students to scholarship averages, and they generally have some very useful information that I think any law school and any law student needs to publish and take a look at. So back to how a 509 report applies to conditional aid. Basically, a 509 report is going to tell you the number of students who were given a conditional scholarship, but during the course of the year had their scholarship either reduced or completely taken away. If you see on the 509 report that those numbers are high or higher than you would expect them to be, I would advise you to take a look at that scholarship a little closer and to view it with a little bit of caution, because in a way, largely that rose has some thorns. The second type of aid, aside from conditional aid, is the opposite, unconditional aid. It's not going to be based on any academic achievement while you're in school, and this can take quite a bit of pressure off of you as a law student because you're not necessarily worried about whether you're going to be able to afford to come back the following year. Many schools in the top tier typically only do unconditional aid and need-based aid that's going to be based on your family or personal income. So I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, how do you even get a scholarship to law school? But the basic answer is GPA and test scores. I know it's tricky because not everyone's going to be an academic overachiever, but realistically speaking, it's going to be a tough reach to get a substantial scholarship without excelling in at least one of these categories. There are other scholarships out there that are going to be goal-oriented and not necessarily merit-based. For example, if you plan to go into business law and there's a business law scholarship, or if you plan to go into public service and there's a scholarship for students that want to go into public service. However, even those scholarships are more likely to go to students that have higher GPAs and higher test scores to entice higher achieving students to come to whatever law school that scholarship's being offered at. So what kind of GPA and test scores do you need? This is a moment where, again, a 509 disclosure is going to be extremely helpful. A 509 disclosure has information on a incoming law school class's GPA averages and test score averages. It'll tell you the 75th percentile, median, and 25th percentile. Say you apply to a certain law school and you know that you're above their 75th percentile. Usually you have a higher chance of getting a scholarship to schools where your GPA and your test scores, or at least one of them, are in that category. Now, this is just usually. It's a general rule of thumb, but nothing is guaranteed. So let's talk about when you actually receive your scholarship offer. There's a lot to this, and I'm gonna fly through it, so stick with me. Usually, when you get a scholarship offer, I think it's generally a good idea to try to negotiate for more money. The worst a school can tell you is no, so you might as well shoot your shot. Even if you don't get a scholarship offer at all, or you don't think you're good enough to go to a school, you should still ask. Closed mouths don't get fed. And again, even if they give you a couple $1,000s, that's a chip off of paying sticker price, and that can make a pretty big difference. You can negotiate for more scholarship money by comparing your existing scholarship to that of another school, or you can do it without an existing offer from anywhere else. And this is another moment where 509 disclosures become super helpful. They contain the average scholarship money that students receive. For example, at Georgetown, it looks like the majority of students who receive scholarship money receive 25% or less of tuition. That means if you get something like a 50% scholarship or higher, you know you've received the upper crust of what a law school is typically willing to offer incoming students. Now, if you're balling out and you get a full scholarship, that means you're really wanted by a law school. Really in the upper crust of what a law school would typically offer. I say all of that to give you an idea of what you may consider realistic or unrealistic to ask for when you're trying to negotiate for more money. Now, when you ask for more money, I did so in letter form, meaning I wrote a letter back to the Dean of Admissions, thanking them for my existing scholarship offer and asking them if they'd be able to come up with any additional funds. For example, if you plan to work in public service, say that in your response letter and explain that that means you're less likely to have a lot of money when you graduate, and that means you want to put yourself in a position where you have to take out less in student loans. If you have unique family circumstances, explain that too. Or if you just need them to give you a little bit more money to make you consider their offer over a higher ranked school where you received a scholarship, you should also explain that too. Whatever you say, I just advise you to be as real and as transparent with your finances as possible. You're used to receiving letters of these types from a lot of students who receive scholarship money, so you're not necessarily going to throw them for a loop by asking for more. I advise you to try to keep your letter to one-page, single-space typed, and you can typically send it back to the admissions committee or financial aid office electronically. Now, hopefully you receive a response from the financial aid office or the admissions committee pretty quickly, but even if they don't give you more money, it's okay, at least you tried. And if they do give you more money, ask for a little bit more. I know it sounds counterproductive, but if they have a little bit more money to offer you, it's not gonna hurt anyone by asking for a specific dollar amount more or asking them to give you the full amount. Oftentimes, the answers to these questions can and will be no. But again, the worst they can tell you is no, and the best they can do is try a little harder to meet you where you are. So that's the scholarship process in a nutshell. 509 disclosures are extremely helpful, and you should pretty consistently be looking at them throughout your admissions process and throughout your scholarship negotiation process. And even if you don't get a scholarship to law school, ask for one. It's never gonna hurt. That's all I have for today. Leave me some comments below. What would you like to learn about the law school admissions process? I'll see you all next Thursday. Thanks for watching.